So thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. I suppose just to start by introducing myself, if you don't know me, I'm Evan Friedman, and I'm the Learning and Development Specialist. But this morning, I'm here as a previous emerging leader with the organization. So this morning's panel's discussion is going to start with our executive leadership team, who I have right here. We're going to be looking at some of their perspectives on the strategic plan that David was just talking about and their department's achievements within it, particularly over the last year. We'll be focusing on some key themes of stability, credibility, and vision, and then looking at their thoughts for the future. If you have any questions throughout this morning's panel, please submit them through Slido, and we're going to try to get through as many as we can. So without further ado, just to start by introducing the panel here with me, I'm just going to go from the far end over there. We have Dermot Murphy, who is our Director of Services and Development. Sarah Reeves, Director of People and Organization. Please hold your applause to the end, Ross, thank you. And then we have our Director of Fundraising and Communication, Caroline O'Connell, and Kevin Barrett here, Director of Finance and IT. So just to start, they're going to share a little bit with you from our strategic plan. So we'll give everyone just a couple of minutes, and we'll be starting this morning with Sarah Reeves.
Okay, thanks very much, Evan. So, as I suppose David has already outlined, values are the reason we're here in Work for DePaul. So strategy is what gives us the focus. So what I'll do is I'll just talk a bit more about the progress that's more directly linked to the People and Organisation Department, and many of the team are here. And just talk about, I suppose, what are the main objectives and some achievements around that. So I suppose the first thing to say is that quality and compliance is part of the P&O function. So we have Barbara here, Anita here, and Sarah Mead. And really, I suppose there's been a lot of work done within, I suppose, that newly formed department over the last number of years. And I'm glad to say that we're fully compliant with all external governance requirements in DePaul, Ireland, DePaul, Northern Ireland, and also the DePaul Housing Association as well. And then just, I suppose, moving on to some of the more, I suppose, general HR themes as well. The annual engagement survey, that's something that we undertake on a regular enough basis. And it's something that we will continue to do to continue to gather feedback. And, you know, I suppose with the end goal around continuous improvement. So you can see on the slides what the response rates were for 2022 and what the staff engagement scores were. So our overall staff engagement score is close to 80%. So obviously our goal, as I said, is to keep on improving there where we can, keep listening to people, and then keep engaging with people on a regular basis. So we have used the DePaul Hub Date, and that was something that really was created during COVID to keep, I suppose, a regular weekly messaging going. And it's something that I would say is, I'm glad to say, has been kept up. We're also combining that with more in-person events now, so we're kind of moving to face-to-face engagement where we can, but trying to really, I suppose, make that more impactful as well, because you know, we're 37 services, as David reminded us, so we're quite geographically dispersed as well, so it's trying to make the most out of, I suppose, how we engage and how we communicate. But obviously we're always open for feedback on how we can do things better as well. And then just in terms of the health and well-being, so there was an emphasis in the strategy around health and well-being, and you know, we continue to run modules around mental well-being, for example. We're dedicating the month of October to it. And trauma-informed care is something that we did roll out, and it's something that we have had a high enough uptake on, and we'll continue to encourage people to complete that programme. But I do think it is something that we're working quite closely with services as well around trying to really, I suppose, embed that practice more as well. So it's kind of an ongoing piece for us. And then in terms of leadership development, I'm glad to say that we have a number of emerging leaders here. It's great to see you all. And I think it's something that we were able today to be able to include, I suppose, former emerging leaders, those that have successfully graduated. Sorry, no one can hear me. You've already met Evan, and you'll meet some more as well throughout the day. Induction as well is something that we have strengthened. So we do have a regular induction program in place, and it's something we're continuing to work on, making sure that we improve local induction. So we're working quite closely with the services at the moment. We've also implemented the DePaul building blocks as well. So that's really about that core foundational piece around really low threshold working. And that's kind of a core piece around induction as well, because I suppose it's important that we have all the skills and tools to be able to work with the most marginalised people. The mentoring as well, so that was something that we created as well, and that was really something that was driven by cultural integration, so the transfer of services. We set up a mentoring program in order to be able to support new managers that were coming into DePaul for the first time. We had maybe a slightly different way of working. So we are expanding that out at the moment, and we have, I suppose, promoted that with our managers, so hopefully we'll get more applications. And then just, I suppose, in terms of the agile working piece, we have been really something that happened as a result of COVID. It was something that we ended up having to look at new ways of working and working from home and hybrid working. So that's something that we will continue to evaluate where possible. And then finally, volunteering. So we have some people here as well from the volunteer department. We have some volunteers here as well. And just to say, I suppose volunteering was impacted by COVID, but I'm glad to say now that we have a strategy in place and the numbers are increasing as well. So, but plenty more to do. So I suppose with strategy, the job really never ends. So I'll hand it over to the next speaker.
Next, we have Caroline O'Connell.
Apologies for the photo. Firstly, before I talk about any of the objectives or any of the achievements over the last number of years, I want to say thank you to everybody here. And, you know, fundraising and communications is always a collaborative piece. It's always a team effort. So I just want to say a huge thank you to the team in fundraising and communications. I see some of them out there today, and I know a fair few of them played a big part in putting today together. It's a key communication to our staff. And also to say thank you to all of our staff across the organisation, because you're absolutely vital to getting our message out on a local community basis, and also to harness in kind of support for fundraising. And you do that so well. There are some shining stars, and again, we're eternally grateful. We couldn't do it without you. So again, all of this is speaking to the achievements of everybody here through the fundraising and communications team. So in fundraising and communications, we kind of do what we say we'll do on the tin. So the first strategic objective is really around building that strategy for our fundraising that will inspire the public to support DePaul's work and maximise that support. And I suppose some of the standouts are, yes, we have the strategy in place, but the growth that's been achieved, and particularly over the recent years where we had COVID and we had really unusual challenges that we'd never faced before. So if we're looking at pre-strategy up until results last year, we've more than doubled income from fundraising for DePaul. And that's really, really important for us going forward to build on. It shows us that people really believe in what we do and want to get involved and play a part in that. And so again, we're the conduit for that, and we'll continue to do it. We've invested in developing new income streams. So again, in fundraising, we've always been very well supported by the public through our individual giving programme. So people send in lots of donations. What we want to do now is to build further kind of opportunities for engagement with communities, with corporates and with institutions, so that we can have a more balanced portfolio of fundraising that will be sustainable for the future. So some of the areas that we've invested in would include community fundraising. So I know many of you will be familiar with Sarah Carney, who does fantastic work developing community fundraising and working with a lot of our services. Stephen Love has been, I suppose, a dedicated resource to develop philanthropy and grants. And then we've really invested in a new resource to drive digital marketing. And Richard McGrath is somebody who you will become more familiar with. He's recently joined the team and doing a great job of telling our story online. I suppose the second objective then focuses more on our communications. It's really, really important. I suppose I defy anybody to ever raise a penny for an organisation without communicating effectively. And so the story that we tell, the story of DePaul, our people, those we serve and our staff, and also the impact that we can achieve together, really, I suppose, is what inspires support. So we want to be good at telling our story and have a strategy around our communications and advocacy, and that's in place. Some of the standouts, again, are we always look at brand awareness. It's a key metric for communications and whether we're doing that effectively. And in 2022, we saw a 10% increase in brand awareness for DePaul. It was the highest growth of brand awareness across the homeless sector in Ireland. That's really significant. It's really significant growth. It's a very positive indicator for our communications. And so what that means is 1 in 2 people across the Republic of Ireland now are aware of who DePaul is and who we aren't. We're not St. Vincent de Paul. They're getting better at that. And also, I suppose, are aware of the work that we do. We've also reached a broader audience. So this year alone, in 2023, up until Q3, we've reached 120% of the audience that we reached in the full year of 2022. And again, that's an annual increment we want to see developing to help us reach new audiences in the regions, in Northern Ireland and across Ireland. I suppose we also did invest in that digital marketing strategy. So that was developed into kind of early this year from last year and culminated in being adopted by the Fundraising and Communications Committee in Q2, and then we recruited our new resource to kind of drive that piece. But Noreen Byrne, our Communications and PR Manager, who again you'll be familiar with from coming around gathering stories and services, is working very closely with Richard to make sure that we're continuing to meet, I suppose, people online and tell them our story and engage them in supporting DePaul. The next kind of key kind of objective for us was developing a research plan. So it's part of the communications piece, really, but we want to make sure that we develop a research plan that generates knowledge from our existing data and also engages in new research with our academic and sector partners to drive initiatives internally. And we've started that. Again, it's probably really only been this year when we've gotten to focus on it, but this year there was quite significant achievements made. So we've started to, I suppose, have enhanced use of our data. That's really important for us when we're telling DePaul's story. That helps inform our strategy, our communications and PR, our research and key campaigns. We have now got a research strategy in place, and we have key projects that have been prioritised for Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland over the coming years. And we also have a steering committee in place who will make sure that that progress continues, because we're all busy and research is so important because it underpins what we do and it builds credibility when we evidence the need and the impact of DePaul. So the final one that I've mentioned there is the advocacy engagement plan, and David's touched on this. It's such a big part of our communications. Advocacy is what we're all about. Every single person who works for DePaul or who volunteers for DePaul should be an advocate for DePaul, and we strongly believe that. So again, building those forums for people to become better advocates through the regional fora, through the Glormore, as it's been named now. And again, you're also passionate about the work that you do. So we've built in media training for staff so that we have a broader panel of spokespeople, and they do fantastic work. It means that we can get better coverage, that we can have better quality and quantity of spokespeople for DePaul, and that means that we better represent the diversity of our work and the diversity of our service users. We also have a pre-budget submission that we launch every year. We're very close to the budget now. It's this day next week, actually. So again, having that lobbying voice to be able to advocate for those we serve and call out the government on what we feel is most important and what they need to do. We also have campaigns, so you might remember in the lead up to Christmas last year we had our Not Just a Number campaign. It was really successful. It focused in on youth homelessness, and we played a key part in the youth homelessness strategy, so we were very well placed to tell that story. And we also, in that, were shortlisted as a finalist in the PR Awards this year, so again that stood out to the public. And then we also are involved in various other pieces that are really important, and again build that trust and credibility in our work. And I'll hand over to the next speaker.
I'm going to hand it over next to Kevin Bear, our Director of Finance and IT.
So good morning, everybody. So I'm sure you probably don't know most of what we do in finance and IT, and I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but it's a small team of, I suppose, specialists in a large degree. But I'm just going to cover some of the things that are in our strategic plan that finance and IT are responsible for. So the first item on the screen is our annual statutory financial statements, sometimes referred to as our SORP accounts. So SORP is an acronym for the Statement of Recommended Practice. So these are the rules by which we produce our annual accounts. And really the key message in those is to be open and transparent. We've received money from our statutory funders, we've received money from the public and from grant-making bodies, and we report back in a formal and structured way in our accounts. And it's really about openness, transparency and good governance. And getting a clean audit opinion every year is vital in that regard, and that's what we've achieved. So those accounts then are filed, they're public, we put them on our website, they go to the charities regulator, they go to the Northern Ireland Charities Commission, they go to our funders, they go to the approved housing body regulator, the HSE. I'm sure most of them don't read them that closely, but they are open and available to the public. Secondly, I suppose, we've had to, because of Brexit, we've had to produce consolidated accounts for the first time. So that's when we add all the Irish entities together. And one of the key items in that, I suppose, is that it shows that our total revenue is just touching 30 million euros. So as we get bigger and more complex, being open and transparent becomes all the more important, and being trustworthy. The second area kind of relates to that, and we get a lot of our funding from statutory sources. So roughly, I mean, if you want to kind of rule of thumb, about 85% of our income comes from government sources. And Caroline brings in the other, and her team bring in the other 15%, and all of you contribute to that in different ways. But obviously we're hugely dependent on government and statutory funding, whether it's a local authority, the HSE, in the north supporting people, NIHE, the Public Health Agency, we've got probation, and increasingly the Department of Children. So there's a large number of funding relationships that we have to manage, and finance's role, I suppose, is to support David in his advocacy that he talked about, support Dermot and the other SSMs in putting in business cases and proposals to try and increase our funding. That was successful to a degree so far, particularly in the regions. As David said, we're still waiting. It's October, but we're still waiting after multiple submissions to DRHE. So it's a constant piece of work or battle, I guess. But again, it's very important that we're open and transparent with our funders. They give us money. What did we do with it? How well did we control it, and how well we report back? We do our annual accounts once a year, but we have to report to our funders every quarter in detail, and they all have different requirements. So that's kind of a lot of what we have to do, answer a lot of questions, and be open to challenge and question. The last point there is one of our increasingly important funders is the Department of Children, as we've gotten in more work in the international protection area that David alluded to. So Rose's Place, Augusta Lodge, lots of work in DePaul housing, all supporting international protection applicants. and the expansion, obviously, of Cosán Nua. So that work is probably, in financial terms, will have more than tripled in 2023. So a lot more reporting and rules and figuring out what's needed and what people want to see. The other area, I suppose, that we've been particularly focused on is the whole cybersecurity area and protecting Nepal. You can hardly move without hearing stories of cyber criminals, ransomware attacks. This is Cybersecurity Awareness Month across Europe. The government is running ads. I heard them on the radio today. And we're running ads internally, if you want to call it that. So every month you're being asked to complete or to participate in an awareness program. 3, 4, 5 minutes max. Just constantly, I suppose, reminding each of us what we need to do to stop us being attacked. The single biggest weakness, the single way that that cyber criminals will get into Nepal is by one of us clicking on the wrong thing. And the message, I suppose, that we're trying to get out from IT is you need to be paranoid. They are coming to get you. And while that might be funny, it's actually true. What closed the health service in the Republic down for months was somebody clicking on the wrong thing. So that will continue, and we will continue to roll that program out. IT obviously does all the stuff you'd expect them to do, the firewall to keep out viruses, updating our software when you log on and you see on your laptop or your desktop, to update, you need to click the updates. That's pushing out new security features to keep Nepal safe. And it's one of the most important things is that we all are that bit paranoid. And if in doubt, ask before you click on it. The pen testing was, we got an external company to come in and have a look at our systems and try to hack into them, I guess. Made some recommendations and IT have implemented those. So that's kind of the firewall aspect of things. The other big project that Sarah and I are kind of jointly responsible for in the strategic plan is what we're calling our digital transformation project. So this is all about using systems better and trying to be more efficient. And about a year ago, this is a long process because it's a significant investment. About a year ago, we got some help from an external company called Explio. One of their directors is one of our trustees. They gave us some pro bono help to really look at and define what are the problems that we're facing and to really understand what, in the jargon, I suppose, what are our problem statements. And with those well understood, we went out looking for some solutions that would address those problems. And now we've just submitted a grant application to a philanthropic organisation in the UK. We're asking for a very significant investment, nearly €500,000 to spend on improving our IT infrastructure, to make your lives better, to make my life better, to take as much administration out of the process as we can so you can do the stuff that you want to be doing. I know people love administration, as in you'd love to do less of it. And that's the objective of that digital transformation project for next year. So we're optimistic of getting that funding. We won't know for another couple of months. But that's one of the big priorities for Sarah and myself. And it will impact everybody, some people more than others, but it will impact everybody in the organisation as we start to roll out new tools and new applications. So that's me. Hand it back, Devin.
Thank you, Kevin. So last but not least, we'll move on to Dermot here.
So I have 5 areas that sort of sit within my thematic responsibility within the strategic plan. I'm going to list them off and then I'm going to give a little sense of some of the achievements and that. So we have the service development plans. Most everybody in the room will know what they are. We're coming into SDP time, always great fun. The ELT will come out and meet with all of the teams in some way. We've done it online the last couple of years. I'm announcing now that I'm going to be asking them to do a face-to-face. I've already spoken to David. Sorry. NQSF and QAF are 2 things that some people know a bit more about than others. They're basically the quality assurances for services, and we work with Barbara on that. And Barbara has worked with Ross this year to develop the new NQSF aligned audit process, and that's been really helpful. The next thing is carbon footprint We've done quite a bit of work at starting to try and align ourselves towards a greener sense of how we do our work. Again, we're going to focus on that a little bit today, which I'm really excited about in the Emerging Leaders. But Tim has been leading for us on the Emerging Leaders projects, but on the carbon footprint and generally energy consumption and different things like that. You can see some of the achievements there around just looking at, auditing our services a bit more, figuring out how we might try and drive down those costs on consumption in services. And it's been really interesting for me how Emerging Leaders projects have really bought into that and tried to come up with ideas. Very simple ideas in some ways, but very, very practical ideas that are helping. So that really excites me. Our service user involvement strategy, so that sits within services for the obvious reasons. And we work closely with HHP, and David's done a lot of work with them this year, and we've moved on beyond that now to the Big Voice, which is going to be an exciting iteration next year. I'm really excited to see where we take that, and I think myself and Dave have had a couple of conversations about how we might involve some of our contemporaries. I've met with a couple of service user involvement programs outside of Ireland, so I've suggested to Dave we might try and do something next year, and I know that Rachel and some of the HHPA were at a conference in London which was very service user involvement focused, so I'm looking forward to seeing what comes from that. And then regional services and integration. So obviously we had the regional service come in, it's 2 years as of this week, I think, first week in October. Poor Andy, Jack and everybody else got ambushed over to us and off we went to the races. And the whole job within the strategic plan was integration and finding a more cultural integration to that. And I think over the last couple of years, through the work of what you guys have done with us to get there, but also the work that different departments have done to help us integrate and to look at how we do that. We're now using the service development plans, all policies and procedures are now adopted. The audit process is done. Our regional senior service manager is actually the one that looked after the audit this year, so that was great. And in all of that, what I'd say is that my team, the senior service team, are very well aligned and understand their roles, and that's been really helpful. That's their plan, so that's not my plan, that's their plan. Everything that we do drives off of this, so when we're moaning at you, any of us about we need this, or fill out this spreadsheet, or do this, it's driven from, in some way, the strategic plan, and either us being consistent, being trustworthy, looking towards the future. So, thank you.
I'm now going to move us on to the discussion portion because we've got some good questions coming in. Okay, so we've heard a bit about what you've been working on over the last year and some of your department's achievements. I think to start, can you just tell us a few main points of what your goals are for the coming year?
I'll start. Got in there for you, Kevin. I went last the first time, so. For me, I think, broadly speaking, there's a degree of consistency to what we want to do. What I would like to do, and I jotted down a couple of notes. In NI, expansion is very much on the table. Not to call anyone out, but we have our organisational sustainability manager in the audience who just started with us in Northern Ireland, Siobhan McKenna. So she's working with myself to look at what that plan's going to look like. I'm not going to make her stand up, but she will wave. So part of Siobhan's plan is to look at where we might expand, how we might do that, how we might reconsolidate some of our elements to be better functioning in Northern Ireland. What we miss is scale in Northern Ireland more than anything. So we're just looking at that. We want to look at more housing-led properties and services, so that's a big push for us. So worth noting that Housing First will be coming back up for tender in the Republic of Ireland. We will be looking at what that looks like. Not sure yet, but we'll speak about it and we'll make a call on where and when and what we'll get involved in with other key stakeholders. They want to complete a review of the ROI services against the strategic plan. Again, thinking of that housing-led approach and if we're going to enhance services, what that might look like. We're already doing it with Spire. David's talked about that this morning. And we're looking at Peter's Place, which is very close to aligning itself better to the youth strategy that's out. So overall, I'll leave it there to let other people speak, but that's broadly where we're going.
Yeah, so for me, I suppose the key critical areas would be really around recruitment and retention. So we'll continue to diversify our recruitment methods. We have hired a new graduate program coordinator, so we're looking to hire graduates and take our first intake in 2024. So Helen is here anyway. I won't ask her to stand up, but maybe a wave. So in terms of, I suppose, Northern Ireland as well, we've had some challenges with recruitment there as well. So we're engaging with an agency there around international recruitment and looking to take people from abroad as well where possible. So we're in a legal process at the moment to try and get recognised as a sponsoring organisation. Retention I mentioned as well, so I think retention is a key piece for us to focus on. So that is continuing to strengthen our induction process, look at what the learning needs are. So we recently did a learning needs analysis, so looking at that feedback, trying to get a sense of what the gaps are and putting a plan in place. The digital transformation will hopefully help with retention as well. Less administration should make happier workers, essentially. And then I suppose David talked a lot about pay rates and being able to pay more competitively as well. So that's a big priority as well to help retain people. Do more around recognition and continuing to look at ways in which we can engage people. So that's in a nutshell.
Thanks, Sarah. I'll try and keep mine in a nutshell as well. And for fundraising and communications, it's going to be a big year when we review, refocus and refresh our strategy to raise our ambitions and have the robust plans to meet those ambitions and achieve them. So one of the key things we'll do is we'll look at the success we've had so far with the communication strategy and really hone in on the research and advocacy elements of that and see where we can do more. We want to build tailored fundraising and communication strategies for each area that we work in. So, we will have the holistic plan, but we also want to have tailored strategies for Northern Ireland and for the regions. And I think that's so important. We all see the potential that's there. So I think that what we want to do now is develop the specific plans, the roadmaps that will get us to a place where we can engage those communities and key stakeholders like corporates, trusts and foundations that will be able to really invest in DePaul's work at a local level. There's definitely an appetite for that. We also want to continue to diversify our fundraising kind of mix for sustainable growth. And one of the changes that happened this year is we've changed the structure of the team to kind of collate certain areas where there's alignment, and we've called it our strategic partnerships team. So that's headed up by a new member of the team, Grania Daly. So the strategic partnerships manager role replaces our corporate partnerships manager role, but it also broadens that out to include community fundraising and philanthropy and grants. So working with Sarah Carney, Stephen Love, Grania will kind of build a more ambitious plan of how we can engage those key stakeholders and balance our fundraising mix. We want to develop and implement a specific strategy for philanthropy. So philanthropy sounds very fancy. Really, it means love of people. And what we want our philanthropy strategy to do is to help us to engage and inspire support from key donors who can invest in and support DePaul's work at a higher level. So that would be high net worth donors who want to make major gifts and also legacy gifts. So promoting legacy gifts and telling the story of what DePaul would do with a legacy gift and how it can make a lasting impact for future generations. We also want to continue that focus on digital marketing That's focusing in on income generation, but also plays a role in supporting broader organisational strategic objectives. So when you hear Sarah talking about recruitment and retention, we all know that those stories of how well, people are supported and your, development in people's progression in DePaul, we can tell those very effectively on social media channels like LinkedIn. It's a key platform for recruitment now as well. And then there's other benefits to social media engagement. So we can attract volunteers, and we can also build the reputation of the organisation through telling pertinent stories. The other area, sorry, I do have notes because I don't rely on my memory anymore at my age, is, and Dermot's mentioned it, so this is really just getting it in there, that an important part of our work will be working with Siobhan as the organisational sustainability manager, and working closely to support her in accessing those larger and longer lasting funding opportunities for DePaul. So I'll hand you over to Kevin.
I think from a finance point of view, I think 2024 is probably going to require us to work hard to maintain trust with our funders, with the public. And I think that'll be a key theme for us in finance next year, that openness and transparency and good governance. I think the really big deliverable, though, will be the digital transformation project. So we've been a long time in the planning. It'll take a long time to implement. It'll take all of 2024, if not into a little bit of 2025. So we are talking about having to replace our HR system. We're talking about putting in a system that will allow services to manage your rota and replace all your timesheets and time tracking so that we can do the payroll more effectively, and replace our financial reporting system. So it's a big project, and that will take an awful lot of, I think, our time in finance, and P&O and services. And I think the rest of the time will be supporting the stuff that Dermot has mentioned. So every time there's a new development in services, finance are involved in the background to help with costings and business case and building the reporting infrastructure behind it when it happens. So that's kind of the day job, if you like, but that'd be, I suppose it continues to be important. So yeah, I would say good financial control, good governance, maintaining trust, and developing our systems.
Awesome. Thank you all. So you've done a great job of anticipating a lot of the questions we're getting in. So you've already touched on some of these, but I want to make sure we get to the questions from the audience. So one of the first things I want to ask, and Sarah, this is for you, there's been a lot of questions about personal growth and development and progression in the organization. So where can staff find out more about opportunities to move around services or even obtain roles, possibly in central office, some of the more varied roles coming up?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of how we, I suppose, manage career progression. So we have a lot of leadership development programs. So we have the Emerging Leaders program. So that is open to all staff who are, I suppose, looking to look at their own personal leadership within their role, potentially take on more responsibilities within their role, and also then potentially progress into management. So we do have, in terms of career progression, we have about 65% of internal progression. So that means a lot of our deputy managers and project group managers are actually come from internal hires. So there is that, which is kind of, I suppose, most people would understand the leadership development programs that are there. There's Emerging Leaders, there's Management Essentials. We're looking to expand that for next year as well, to focus on maybe more established leaders as well, what we can do there. In terms of moving around, how that works is, like, you can apply for a transfer if you want to get different experience. And we advertise all our roles internally as well, so you can look at what's required there. And I would say as well, mentoring is, I think, a key piece as well. Taking advantage of mentoring opportunities from different people, maybe who have different experience, certainly can help you look at what you maybe need to do in order to progress. And so looking at your, I suppose, strengths and areas for development as well. I could go on, but I'm conscious of time.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. It's really good to hear about all the development opportunities as well as how people might be able to learn more about progressing in the organization, because I'm sure, as everybody knows, we've got a lot of long-term serving staff. So I think the progression is there, and there's so much to learn about it still, and look for opportunities internally.
And I will say as well, the DePaul Hub, so we try and put everything up there as well. So it's about, I suppose, internal, I suppose looking at internally, who can I talk to, who can I get advice from, but we also give a lot of information on the DePaul Hub as well. And Evan is always available for questions.
Thanks, I appreciate the plug, Sarah. Okay, so moving on to just another question. I've got one here for Dermot, which I think is a question a lot of us have right now. Everyone's aware of the upcoming possibility of strike action. One of the questions we have here is, what is ELT or yourself doing to avoid the possible looming strike?
Well, I think we've already heard from David in the efforts that we're in. At the end of the day, David leads most of this stuff for us. We've engaged with the Wheel on national pay, infrastructure, lobbied with the government. We continue to do that. We have a very good relationship with the union. And we have been talking with them for quite a while about the fact that this may be an action they need to take, particularly if the WRC piece failed. So we knew it was coming in some ways. What we're doing to avoid a strike right now is, David's just written to the Taoiseach this morning, so that's one part. We're engaged with our funders and making them aware of the union's position. We're very much in media talking to the fact that we see the WRC process as one that will create the best solution for everybody. And we're collaborating with the union on how the strike action will be taken. So we're due to meet the strike committee soon, and we've had previous conversations with them about what we all agree is the most important thing as part of strike. Our position is that we want the most vulnerable to be protected within a strike. To be fair to the union, they agree. So I think overall what we're trying to do is to work with the union, understand and empathise with their position, although we are an employer, and we are limited by the funds we get. And to be fair, the union are quite empathetic to that, hence the reason the strike is very much towards government alignment to pay structure. So we'll continue to work with the union. Right now, we're taking a watch and brief and working with the union to try and ensure that any strike or any action both gets what the union need to get rid of it, but has the minimum impact on those most vulnerable.
It's great to hear. Thank you, Dermot. Just, I suppose, keeping in that same area, talking about what we're doing to support staff and how we're making, hopefully, everyone's jobs easier. We've gotten a couple questions here about the digital transformation project. So, Kevin, maybe you can tell us a bit about how that's going to impact everyone's jobs. What's going to get easier for them?
Okay, so what we want to do, I suppose, a key aspect of it is to get rid of spreadsheets and filling in forms. So there are tools out there that will help us to make sure that we pay everybody correctly every month, for example. We make too many mistakes. There's too much reliance on paper-based processes. That's one aspect of the project. Helping LMTs to be able to manage a rota and using the tools that are available out in the market that would make that easy rather than using pieces of paper and spreadsheets. And so they're kind of two key aspects of it. There are other more kind of, maybe a bit more of within finance, we will benefit from having easier financial reporting processes to cut down the time it takes us to generate information that's needed for decision making. So precisely how it will affect you on a day-to-day basis, I guess, will depend on what you do. And yet to be fully thrashed out. So we've not gotten into detailed planning with the software providers. We've seen demos of the different systems. We've kind of got a broad idea, but it will be around being able to allow you to self-serve some of your HR needs, rather than relying on, sending off email requests and getting back answers and all that kind of back and forth to automate that process. So everything from kind of onboarding right through till we can pay people every month. All of those processes will be impacted in some way, some more than others. Anyway, details to follow. I won't bore you with it. I was going to say I won't bore you with the technical detail that I don't have.
That's great. Thank you.
I just wanted to come in and say, I suppose as part of that, we will be looking at change management as well. So what exactly the changes will be and how they'll be managed. So there'll be training offered as well as part of that project.
Great, thank you. So I'm conscious of time here. We're going to wrap this up right now, but one last question looking forward to the future. So maybe this is for you, Dermot. Are there any plans or goals to set specific targets for our carbon footprints?
Yes.
That's done. That's the end of the panel there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, there very much is. Myself and Tim have had various conversations on this. What we wanted to do is get to a position where we actually know our carbon footprint across the quantum of everything we provide. That will then allow us to speak with some experts and tell us what's possible. Like, can we aim for zero? Is that possible in our world? And if we do that, how do we get there? It's going to require all of us to be different in it. We've gone paperless, for example, but I know not every service is paperless. True? Although we say we've gone paperless. So to get this working, we need to understand why people haven't been able to fully achieve that, and we have to change. So that's us not just making assumptions because we say we're gone paperless. Everyone's now paperless. So it's stuff like that. But our hope is certainly to be driving in one direction, which is downwards against our carbon footprint. I have an ambition, and Tim knows this, as does DLT, definitely David. I would like to start seeing us putting renewables into our services going forward, whether that's backlaying and solar panels on the roof, where there's large footprints of building where we can actually do something. So stuff to be worked out, but I think if people really want to be involved in it, get in touch with me. We're going to need people that want to put their shoulder to the wheel. It's not an I, it's not a me and Tim, it's a we that resolves this issue. So really glad people are asking those questions, and I expect to see some emails.
Awesome.
We're going to hear from Alan Housen, DePaul.
Cheers, Dermot. Thanks for putting me on the spot, David. Just in regards to DePaul Housing, obviously we're acquiring properties, and one of the key things is to try and make the properties as energy efficient as we can. And there's two reasons for that. Obviously, one is the sustainability aspects, but also, the people we're housing have limited means, and if we can reduce their bills is another side of it. But one of the things we've done recently is the building surveyor, who we use to inspect properties on our behalf, we're asking them to incorporate whatever energy efficiency measures they can in the improvement works we're going to be doing to the properties to bring the BER ratings up. We're required by the Department of Housing to bring the BERs up to a minimum C3, but we're trying to bring them as far beyond that as we can. And certainly with new build, we've got a couple of new build projects where A2 is the BER rating, but we need to be getting up towards that standard for the refurbished properties as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for your input there, Alan. I just want to say thank you to the panel and thank you to the audience for all your questions. It's been a pleasure to hear about everything going on, and I'm sure there's many more questions here to be answered on the Hub Date in the future.